All right, it's 6 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order and start with a salute to the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Well, this is, I warn you, it's my first meeting, so as chair, so my goal is to run a organized, respectful,
recording in progress,
and engaging meeting as prior chairs have done. So with that, Laura, if you could take roll, please.
Commissioner Skavdal.
Here.
Commissioner Mulder.
Here.
Commissioner Levy.
Here.
Commissioner Curriasi.
Here.
Commissioner O'Neill.
Here.
Commissioner Lorna McFarland.
She's absent.
Thank you. Director Ford, are there any agenda modifications this evening?
Yes, Chair Skavdal, there are a few that I would like to bring to your attention. The first one is an item that's on the consent calendar. It's item number E5. It's coastal development permit and conditional use permit. And this has a new condition of approval, just to reflect that some of the other things that are on the site plan aren't being approved. Only what's being requested is being approved. And then this is not a supplemental before you, but I just wanted to call it to your attention so that there was clarity. Item number E7, Humboldt Heritage Farm. The project description says it's for 20,400 square feet. That is absolutely correct. It's correct in most of the, it's correct in the resolution. There is one place in the staff report that identifies it as 16,660 square feet. That is a typo. That should be 20,400. And then item F2, this is a public hearing item. This is for Evergreen Exotics. There, it's just to correct the name on the applicant. That
Evergreen.
it's Evergreen Exotics. I think it was shown as Humboldt Exotics.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's everything?
It's everything.
All right. Thank you. At this time, we'll take public comment on non-agenda items. So if there's anybody in the audience or on Zoom that would like to address the commission on matters pertinent to the commission but that are not on this evening's agenda, now's the time to do so. So just check with the audience in the room. Does anybody wish to speak at this time? I see none. And Zoom attendees, has anybody raised their hand? Okay, see none.
Yeah, you might. Yeah, you're on it. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see it. Okay, then we'll close public comment on non-agenda items and we'll move to the consent agenda. I think we have 7 items on consent. I'll go through the items if anybody...
Chair, just in fairness, a hand did just pop up.
Oh, excuse me. I can't see now. Who's that attendee?
7108.
Oh, okay. So 7108, if you'd like to address the commission on public comment, please do so. You have 3 minutes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Can you unmute? We can hear you.
Okay, I just want to say that you're not coming across on the phone. I can hear you on the computer, but the phone.
108, can you unmute? We can hear you.
Okay, I understand your comment that it's not coming through on the phone.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, it's not, your audio is not coming through on the phone.
Yeah, I think that we understand, and I'll see what we can do to rectify that. Thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Okay, thanks.
Chair, could I suggest that we take a short break to figure this out?
Okay, let's, you think we need 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll be back in 5 minutes while we sort out some of the IT issues. Cleared up. Thank you for pointing that out. So we will close public comment on non-agenda items, and we'll go back to the consent agenda. I will go through each item and poll the commission and the public to see if anybody wants to pull any of these items off of consent for discussion. Otherwise, we will take them up as one matter at the close of the consent agenda. So I'm going to bring the first two together, which is the action summaries from the December 5th and the December 19th meeting. Anybody on the commission want to pull any of the action summaries? And I'll check with the public here and online, and seeing none, I'll go to item 3, which is a conditional use permit for telecommunications, and it's a continuance. So if anybody wants to discuss the continuance of this item, we can pull it. Seeing none on the commission and none in public. From the audience, item 4 is Laurel Tree Charter School Coastal Development Permit Extension. It's also a continuance to February 20th meeting. So anybody want to discuss that continuance? Seeing none on the commission, none in the audience or on Zoom. We go to item 5, which is the Coastal Development Permit and Conditional Use Permit at 4050 Highway 101. This is the conversion of a short-term vacation rental to traditional apartments. This also has the supplemental item 1A5 that's noting that it's only for this and not for any other building permit issues. Commissioners? And checking the audience, nobody in person or on Zoom have raised their hands. So let's stay on. Item 6, Lockbox Storage LLC for a self-storage facility in the Glendale area. Anybody on the commission? In the public? Looking for the audience, and see no hands raised online, so that will stay on. And item 7, Humboldt Heritage Farm Management LLC in the Edisburg area. Conditional use permit and special permit. Commissioners? And the public in the audience or online, I see no hands raised, so all items remain on consent. We'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I would move approval of items 1 through 7, all items on the consent agenda.
I'd second that.
We have a motion from Commissioner Levy and a second from Commissioner Moldar. Any discussion on the motion? Not. I think we can just, I'll just call for the vote. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. We'll move on to item F, public hearings. The first public hearing item is Hum Sun 3 LLC, conditional use permit and special permit. We'll hear from the staff, and then commissioners, if you have any questions of staff, we'll take those, and then we'll open a public hearing. Before we get started, I just wanted to note that I see that GHD did some of the studies on this project, and in the past I have recused myself on projects where GHD's done some of the work, but I'm no longer with GHD, and I've had no income from GHD for more than 12 months. So I believe I do not have a conflict, and I've checked with legal, and they confirm. So that conflict is removed, and so I'm going to remain to hear this item.
Thank goodness.
We need to pause. The computer crashed.
Oh, excuse me. We need to take another break?
Yes, please. The Zoom computer
Okay.
crashed.
So we'll break for, do you think you need 5 minutes or longer? You don't know. We'll check back at 20 after the hour. I'm checking. Are we ready to resume?
Yes.
Okay. So we will open the public hearing on Hum Sun 3 and turn it over to you, Director Ford.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Rodney Andel with Humboldt County Planning, and I'll be presenting for Hum Sun 3 LLC, conditional use permit and special permit project in the Blocksburg area. It's not working, Cliff. Okay, I'm in control now. The project is located where that push pin is, off Alder Point Road in the Blocksburg area, a little bit north of Blocksburg, as you can see there in the aerial imagery. The project consists of a conditional use permit for 3.1 acres of new mixed light cannabis cultivation. There'll be 2 ancillary support buildings totaling 7,280 square feet with wastewater treatment. Water for irrigation and domestic use will be sourced from 3 permitted groundwater wells. The annual water use is estimated at 720,250 gallons, with 12.7 gallons per square foot per year for irrigation. Also proposed is 250,000 gallons of hard tank water storage. There'll be a maximum of 18 employees anticipated for peak operation. Usually there'll be 10 on site, but during peak times of the year there'll be 18. Renewable power will be supplied by Redwood Coast Energy Authority or the equivalent, and by solar. Mixed light cultivation will not occur until the property receives grid power upgrade. The project parcel is accessed directly off Alder Point Road, which is a Category 4 road with a centerline stripe. A special permit is required for project-related wetland impacts, creation and enhancement, riparian area creation and enhancement, and the reconnection of a Class 3 ephemeral drainage. This is the project parcel. It's rather large, and I'm attempting to point at some things. I've got control now. Up on the ridge here, there are 3 wells, one here, one here, one here, that supply water for the project. And this area here will be where 180,000 gallons of water stores will be. I want to point at this area here. Apologize. If I press, it changes it. This area here is what's known as the mid-ridge area, and I'll be referencing that later in the discussion. And this area here by Alder Point Road is the main project area. This is a close-up of what the main project area looks like now. There's the agricultural field with the residents, and there's a couple barns there. This is the site plan for that main area. And as you can see here, there's the greenhouses here. Up in this area where I'm pointing now is a bioswale. And here's some more tanks here. These are the 2 ancillary structures, one here, with parking and the septic located at this location here. This project will impact some wetlands on the agricultural field. Wetland mitigation will occur at a 3-to-1 ratio, resulting in over 2 acres of new or enhanced wetlands for the 0.87 acres of seasonal wetland impacted by the project. This includes 0.45 acres of riparian enhancement and creation of 1.1 acres of riparian area through the reconnection of a Class 3 watercourse. This slide here shows wetland impacts and creation. The pink area are the seasonal wetlands to be impacted by the project. The blue areas are the wetland to be created. The green areas are wetlands to be enhanced, and the yellow areas are wetlands riparian areas to be enhanced. This area here is showing the reconnection of the Class 3 stream. Traditionally, there's a culvert there under the road, and the stream or the water from the culvert would just go out and flow onto this field, but now it's going to be reconnected to Cooper Creek. Excuse me. Some California oatgrass is going to be impacted by the project. 0.21 of 5.53 acres of California oatgrass will be impacted. Mitigation for these impacts will occur at a 2-to-1 ratio. The proposed mitigation area is the mid-ridge site that I showed you earlier, with about 7.6 acres of existing California oatgrass already existing in the area, in the mid-ridge area. The purple here on the slide shows the oatgrass that will be impacted by the project, and the orange areas show the oatgrass that will not be impacted and will remain on site in the locations you see there. Environmental review for the project included a lot of different analysis. Of these included air quality analysis, botanical studies, biological studies, aquatic and wetland studies, wetland mitigation summary, well connectivity studies, a noise study, and septic suitability survey. A mitigated negative declaration was prepared for the project, and during the preparation of this document, numerous mitigation measures were proposed in the areas of air quality, biological resources, cultural resources, tribal cultural resources, energy, geology and soils, and hydrology and water quality. Staff supports the project as mitigated, conditioned, and proposed. and recommends that the commission adopt the initial study and mitigated negative declaration for the Humboldt 3 commercial cannabis cultivation project, make all the required findings for approval of this conditional use permit and special permit, and adopt the resolution approving the Humboldt 3 conditional use permit and special permit subject to the recommended conditions of approval. This concludes my presentation. I'm available, other staff is available, and the project agents are available if you guys have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions for staff at this time? Commissioner Curriozzi?
Thank you. I just have a question regarding the sedge meadow, and there was a comment regarding the rarity of that sedge meadow, and I was kind of curious if you could elaborate a little bit on that in terms of the mitigation, with the mitigation effort. I'm curious what the rarity, how rare the meadow is and what the mitigation would look like.
If I recall correctly, it was kind of vague on the rarity. There was a question mark and a number, but and I hope I'm saying this right, and I know that their agent would probably say this better, but the rarity wasn't really confirmed. But I do know that the mitigation will be part of the wetland enhancement and creation, if that helps.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll take public comment now, and we'll first the applicant or their agent. If you'd like to address the commission, you have up to 10 minutes.
Good evening, commissioners and staff. My name is Praj White. I'm with North Point Consulting Group, and me and my team have helped package up this version of the project. I wanted to note that in the staff report you would see that this project originally was submitted over 8 years ago as a 1.0 project, taking advantage of the more than 300 acres and allowing up to 3 acres, and then I think it was 1,100 acres, so or 1,200, excuse me, the project originally was proposed at 12 acres, using that very large project area that you saw and taking advantage of that original ordinance language. The applicants spent tons of money, tons of studies, looked all over the property, and were headed towards EIR for the project, and then hence the extensiveness of the studies and the background that you see. There was some frustration on the applicant's part with moving this through. We ended up chatting with them, finding that, it was a significant project and reaching up on the ridge, and it was spread out all over that property. So we worked with the applicant to talk about what's really important. We worked with staff about what the issues are and the areas of impact. And we identified that concentrating the project only on this meadow that's right next to Alder Point Road has a history of being old horse race track and been used for grazing and cattle operations for years and years. Made the most sense for the application. The applicant was happy to reduce their application, and hence the project fit within this ISMND that you're looking at. It has adopted most of all the fair argument standards that this commission and previous commissions in Humboldt County has established for a good cannabis project in the region. Our staff, who is here this evening, worked with Fish and Wildlife hand in hand through this version of the project. And I'm just really proud that we brought it to you guys. I feel that the studies were extensive and staff was very thorough, and again, working with all the agencies. So just wanted to add that light to the project, and me and the team are here tonight. If there's any questions that come up, we're welcome, or we'd be happy to answer them. And if there is some public comment, we would like the opportunity to come back and rebuttal whatever comments are made. Thank you.
Yep, and we'll provide that opportunity.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else that would like to address the commission on this project at this time, please come up to the podium. And I don't see anybody coming, and I don't, so anybody online, raise your hands. Is it star six, okay, to raise your hand? And I don't see any hands raised.
Give them a couple of minutes.
Okay. There's a bit of a delay, isn't there? Yep, okay. Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close public comment and bring it back to the commission. Commissioners, any further questions of staff? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Well, I just thought I would say I don't actually have any questions. The only question I had earlier today, Rodney already answered, just making sure there was no public comment received. But I think the fact that there wasn't speaks to how well planned this project has been. I appreciate Mr. White's explanation of the history of it, because this is still a big project, and yet it seems to me that all the impacts have been identified, mitigated, or avoided. So I have no concerns about moving forward.
Commissioner Curriasi.
Yeah, along the same lines, I just appreciate the applicant recognizing and taking the time to, fully study their environment and the environment that they'll be existing and working in.
Okay, look for a motion.
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to adopt the resolution 25- which does the following. It adopts the mitigated negative declaration prepared for the Sun 3 LLC project pursuant to section 15074 of the state CEQA guidelines, and finds the proposed project complies with the general plan and zoning ordinance, and approves the conditional use permit and special permit subject to the conditions of approval.
I'll second that.
So we have a motion from Commissioner O'Neill and a second from Commissioner Moldar. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for a roll call vote on public hearing matter.
Commissioner O'Neill?
Yes.
Commissioner Curriasi?
Yes.
Commissioner Mulder?
Yes.
Commissioner Scavdall?
Yes.
Commissioner Levy?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
All right, thank you. Thank you, staff. I will move to item 2, open the public hearing on Evergreen Exotics LLC zone reclassification, and turn it over to you, Commissioner Ford, and staff for staff report. Or excuse me, Director Ford. Gave you a promotion there, sorry.
Yeah, excellent. Chair Scavdall, members of the commission, good evening. My name is Stephen Santos, Senior Planner, presenting the Evergreen Exotics LLC project, which is an ordinance amendment and zone reclassification involving 7 parcels in the Redway area. The project location is in the Redway Business Park, and as mentioned at the top, involves these 7 parcels. The ordinance amendment is to the commercial cannabis land use ordinance, which would allow indoor cultivation within the inland business park, or MB zones, that have a Q qualified combining zone. And so this is in tandem with a zone reclassification to adopt and apply a Q qualified combining zone for indoor cultivation to 7 parcels in the Redway Business Park with performance standards. The amendment to the CCLUO is very surgical. It inserts the underlined language that's on the screen to this one section, which would allow indoor cultivation in the MB zone that have the Q qualified combining zone. As already mentioned, the Q qualified combining zone is very surgical. It only applies to 7 parcels within the business park, and the additional in addition to the requirements of the CCLUO, permits for indoor cultivation within the Q would be subject to 8 performance standards relating to water, energy, and odor. And those specific performance standards are in the staff report, as well as the ordinance attachment that's in your packet. Some real brief, quick history. The reason only 7 parcels within that park are receiving the Q zone have to do primarily to parcels that already have water meters and were participants or were part of the Community Service District's most recent water capacity survey. No public comments were received in response to the notice for the project. Therefore, staff is recommending that the Commission adopt the resolution that finds that the Commission has considered the final EIR for the CCLUO and the addendum that was prepared for the project, finds the proposed project complies with the general plan and zoning ordinance, finds the proposed project does not reduce residential density, finds the proposed amendment is in the public interest, and also for the Commission to recommend that the Board of Supervisors approve the rezoning of the 7 parcels, as well as recommend the amendment to the CCLUO. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions of staff?
I guess I do. Thank you, Mr. Santos. Totally in support of this project. I guess I was just curious to ask you, though, about a comment you make at the bottom of page 2 of the staff report, when you note that in the inland area there are 32 parcels zoned MB. After receiving public comment on the original reclassification petition, it was determined the most suitable location for this proposal was the Redway Business Park. Was it initially being floated that it would be that this change, this Q zone, might extend to other business parks elsewhere in the county?
Through the chair, that is correct. The original petition contemplated why not open this up to all MB zones, but as part of the petition process, we received comment from the landowner that owns the majority, if not all, of the MB zones in the northern county, and that landowner was not interested in having it. So to accommodate that feedback, we made the application more specific and targeted.
Sure. Well, that kind of answers my question. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Curriasi.
Through the chair, I have a question regarding the water limit, which was specified, I think, as 91,250, and I was expecting a gallons per unit of something. I was a little confused by just a flat gallons requirement. Can you elaborate? Is that total gallons across all 7 parcels? Is that per parcel?
That would be per customer of the CSD, so per meter, and that number was arrived at, and the applicant's agent can correct me if I'm wrong, had to do with, that number was consistent with the water capacity analysis that the CSD had done, and that number was consistent with the averages that is typically seen for business park users. So they wanted just to make sure that the indoor cultivation, the use of water for indoor cultivation was equivalent to any other uses in the park from the CSD.
Okay. Commissioner, it looks like you're contemplating another question, so I'm just,
I am. I appreciate you.
Before I open public comment.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you reading my body language. I do. Thank you. That was a helpful explanation. My other question was, I noticed that part of this packet included consent of the landowners, and then I appreciate that additional background. And can you elaborate on why consent of the landowners is needed for establishing a Q zone versus consent of the landowner consenting to a permit being pulled for that use? Like, why are we not able to just simply establish a Q zone?
Through the chair, the answer is you could. It is not a requirement necessarily, but it was provided as part of the evidence from the applicant just to show that those landowners were notified and interested in doing that. And we figured that would be a good step, particularly after the public comment we got during the petition process and one particular landowner not being supportive of it. So you're correct, it wasn't required, but we figured it would be a good bonus to have.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Good questions. So we'll open for public comment on the zone reclassification. And anybody in the audience wish to address the commission, please do so.
Hello. Good evening, Chair and Commissioners and staff. My name is Leah Nelson. I work with North Point Consulting, and we're just here to answer any questions. We've been working with the applicant and staff on this project, and we're happy to bring it to you and here to answer any questions. And Stephen, you did answer all the questions correctly about the water use numbers and things like that. So happy to be here, and let us know if you have any questions for us.
All right. Thank you. Anybody else from the public wish to address the commission? Anybody online as well? Please indicate by pressing *6 to raise your hand. It looks like we have one. I don't know how to identify who that is. It is 7108.
Yeah, it's not showing you the hand next to it.
It's showing it up here. Thank you. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. A couple items on the attachment 5A about PG&E. It says no impact. When I read what they put in that, they were saying our review indicates the proposed improvements do not appear to directly interfere with existing PG&E facilities or impact our easement rights. It's been my understanding that we have a limited amount of power here in southern Humboldt, and it's going to be a while before more is happening. So I'm just wondering if all these turn into indoor grows, where's all that power going to come from? And also regarding the water, I know that Redway, it seems every summer, they got to go through all this stuff because we don't have enough water. And was I hearing correctly that all the parcels up there are using that much water? Because there's a bunch of them that hardly use any water. So, thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands. At this time, does the applicant?
We would give the applicant the opportunity for rebuttal.
The applicant, if you'd like to come up and address any of the comments that have been made so far.
Sure.
You're welcome to.
Absolutely. So yes, there is a PG&E, we're all aware of the PG&E crisis, but one of the special restrictions and performance standards that any applicant interested in having indoor cultivation on one of these 7 parcels would have to meet is that they have to demonstrate existing on-site power from PG&E is on-site and adequate for proposed cultivation. So they would have to already have that power in place. And that could be, it just depends on the existing parcel as to whether or not they have that PG&E capacity already. And also I want to point out that per the ordinance, they would have to enroll in either carbon credits or enroll in RCEA's 100% renewable power requirement as well. And then for the water, there's a lot of back and forth with RCSD about the water for these parcels. And in the special restrictions and performance standards, that number is the 91,000 gallons per applicant is really the maximum that they would be allowed to take from RCSD, and that was based on RCSD's water capacity study, and we came to that number in collaboration with them. Any water in excess of that amount would need to be supplied from rainwater catchment, and they also need to demonstrate in a, what do we call it in here? In a water use and storage plan, which they need to submit with their application to the county. They have to describe all on-site activities, how much water they use, how they're going to comply with that limit of 91,000, if they need extra water, where that's going to come from, rainwater calculations to address how much storage they would need, and exactly how they're going to meet all these restrictions. So those are good points, and they require some extra detail in the applications.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I want to close public comment and come back to staff to see if there's anything else you want to add to or clarify with respect to the comments made.
I think Leah pretty much covered it all. I think the commenters' questions and concerns are comprehensively addressed in the additional performance standards that are part of the Q zone. Standards A through F are all about water, having a water plan, forbearance, acknowledgement that the operator will be subject to curtailment orders if they occur, things of that nature. And then there's another performance standard in there that any applicants will need to demonstrate that they will be able to have adequate energy from PG&E if they're using PG&E power.
So I just have a PG&E question. It's a business park, so there's already PG&E there. They're just opening up an account. And so when it comes to PG&E, I don't think there's a shortage of power. I think that PG&E is not wanting to extend power too far off the existing grid at this time, like into areas where it isn't already there. But if it's already there, I don't think there's a shortage of power to hook up to it, right?
There is a shortage of power, but some parcels do actually have already the power right or the power extended and available at the parcel. They just have to open
an account.
Yeah.
And this is one that already has a connection.
At least one of them does, definitely. The others, that's why the performance standards exist.
Commissioners, any other questions of staff? Seeing none. Oh, Commissioner Curriasi.
I guess more of a discussion with commissioners. So and then we can put question to staff as well. But I think maybe just I'm finding the requirements of the zoning ordinance. I'm confusing that with what might be imposed during the permit process. So it seems odd to me that we would impose a specific water consumption amount in the ordinance instead of that water consumption amount being provided as a condition by the services district upon pulling a permit. It seems like that would be a more appropriate place for it.
Yeah, I think I would turn to
staff for that.
Director Ford.
I think that's a fair question. Oftentimes that is evaluated. But in this particular case, it's not, it's the best form of planning to look at things comprehensively. And that's what was done with the water. If 7 parcels are going to be allowed to develop with all of these uses, and that's the assumption you have to make, then how much water could actually be available? So that's now been established, and that's been allocated to the 7 parcels. And so what this really does is gives an applicant some certainty. If they're coming in under that, they're not going to come in and have to renegotiate the water. They know what's already been negotiated, they know what the expectations are, and they know what they have to do to demonstrate that they have accounted for all the water. So I would submit that it is really good planning to look at that kind of thing up front.
Commissioner Muldaur.
I'd just like to piggyback. The way I read that was the reason it was included was because it was part of that study by the Community Services District, so it's good to tie that in, so that way you're tying our environmental document to another community organization's document to kind of piggyback that environmental potential impact. And I think it's actually like double protecting the county by putting that in there. And that's the way I read it, and everyone has different interpretations.
Thank you. And I just want to confirm my understanding that by approving this amendment to or approving the Q zone, we're not permitting any specific projects for any of these 7 affected parcels. Just wanted to say that out loud. Do you even know, I mean, the staff report lists the 7 owners. Do you even know if they've expressed intentions to move forward with projects under this allowance?
If this is, through the chair, if this is adopted by the board, we're anticipating at least one. We have high confidence at least one will be coming in.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Kirosi.
Thank you. Along the same lines, just kind of thinking this through, and what spurred this idea was staff's justification or argument for the benefit to the public for establishing this Q zone. And going back to my question of whether or not landowners are required to provide consent for this, I'm curious what the drawbacks would be of suggesting that this be considered for all MB areas, even if the areas that are in the northern county, that landowner is not going to consent to it. Landowners can change. And so I'm wondering if there is a benefit for exploring that.
If I could, I would say that we would not actually accept an application unless the property owner signs it.
And yeah, that's kind of my point of instead of.
So it is a little bit redundant. And sometimes what we do is we add redundancy just to give assurance to property owners that they've been heard. And I think in this case, that's what that redundancy is. It's just to tell the people who have expressed concern, we've heard you, and we are putting this in there to make sure that that is memorialized.
And that's not to preclude future applicants in other MB zones from coming forward.
That's absolutely correct.
Okay.
Well,
and if I could,
yes,
I'm sure, sorry, Chair Levy, or Commissioner Levy, is that this really has been structured to allow future consideration. So it's applying to this right now, but it doesn't completely close the door. If somebody else, like a property owner, changes and circumstances change, that door is open, but they just need to change the zoning to add the Q.
Mm-hmm.
With perhaps the exception of the water, the gallons per application, which is currently proposed as part of the language in this zone.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, each zoning action would be considered individually. So if somebody came in up in the McKinleyville setting, for instance, the water allotment up there would be far different. And so the queue may look different. And what the beauty of what's done here is that the change to CMM or CLUO, excuse me, is that it just simply refers to the requirement for the queue. And then each queue can be tailored to meet the circumstances in which it's being applied.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I guess I'll just ask the question I was having, which is prompted by Commissioner Kirosi. I mean, it's not like I'm eager to encourage or whatever more indoor grows in more business parks, but I mean, we could consider extending this Q zone to other places in the north, even though currently the owner of those parcels is not interested. So I guess I just wanted to sort of note that you've sort of put that question out there, like, you know, if we decided this was a good thing for MB zoning to allow it, we could extend the Q zone elsewhere. I'm not pushing us to do that right now, but what I guess you're saying, Director Ford, is that if in future there are any other parcels so zoned where the owner expresses interest in doing so, we can sort of address it at that time.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, or I'm going to call you Chair the rest of our time here. Commissioner Levy. The way it's structured, just to kind of confirm what you said, is that a property owner could come in and ask for the queue at any time.
Okay. Sounds fine to me.
Was that your motion?
Well, sure. Then I will make a motion, a multi-pronged motion, that we adopt the resolution which finds that we have considered the final EIR for the CCLUO and the addendum that was prepared for the indoor cultivation Q qualified combining zone and text amendment to the CCLUO, and find that this project complies with general plan and zoning ordinance, and finds that the proposed project does not reduce the residential density for any parcel below the inventory adopted in the housing element, and recommend the Board of Supervisors approve the rezoning of the 7 parcels listed in this agenda item in the Redway Business Park with the indoor cultivation Q qualified combining zone, and recommend that the Board of Supervisors amend the CCLUO to allow indoor cultivation in Business Park MB zones with the indoor cultivation Q combining zone.
We have a motion from Commissioner Levy. Do we have a second?
Second.
Commissioner O'Neill, motion and second. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Scavdall,
Yes.
Commissioner Mulder,
Yes.
Commissioner Curriasi,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Neill, Commissioner Levy.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Check with commissioners. Do you want to take a break before we enter the next couple of items, or are we good to keep going?
We can get through them
All right.
super quick, right?
Yep. Okay, we'll open the public hearing for Manzanti special permit for short-term rental. And turn it over to staff for staff report.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Chris Low-Hefner. I'm here to talk about the Manzanti special permit for a short-term rental. This particular project is located up in the Trinidad area, just east of Highway 101 at the north end of the Trinidad frontage road on what's known as Alder Lane, which is a small road serving 4 residences. Each of the residences up in that area are residential estates, 2.5 to 5 acres, with single-family residences on each of them. The applicant has submitted a site plan that is complies with the checklist that we have for the short-term rentals. They completed the Good Neighbor Guide and affidavit and submitted those to neighbors beyond what they were required to do, actually. They have adequate parking and water and septic provisions. Trash and recycling has been taken care of in their operations plan. Safety components like fire, carbon monoxide detectors and fire extinguishers and so forth. Everything has been compliant with the standards that we ask of them. And the primary issue or concern with why we've brought this to the Planning Commission is a neighborhood concentration limit that will exceed what is stated in the zoning ordinance. As it is stated, the STR shall not exceed 20% of the dwellings on the access road, and currently there are 2 permitted short-term rentals on this access road, which of course takes the percentage to 50%, and this particular application would take it to 75%, which is well above the threshold, which is why a special permit is needed. And we did go through all of our findings and found that there is no negative impact on the housing element. It is certainly consistent with neighborhood dynamics. The owners do plan to occupy the residence full-time in the not too distant future. This wasn't necessarily a property they purchased just to have as rental income. It is below the 2% short-term rental cap as that relates to the overall housing inventory. And if we back out a little bit geographically, in the unincorporated areas between Clam Beach and Big Lagoon, there are only 9 permitted short-term rentals. There's not a glut of these types of operations in that region. And we do know that short-term rentals offer some benefits to the county in terms of the support for tourist industry, local businesses, transit occupancy tax, and so forth. One of the reasons this has come before the commission is because there are very likely to be similar circumstances in terms of neighborhood concentration limit being exceeded. There are a lot of rural roads in this county, even in Trinidad alone, that have only a handful of homes on them, even less. And the idea of permitting 1 or 2 of those homes for short-term rentals is going to take that percentage above what the standard says. So there's a little bit of a gray area there. I mean, there's a black and white application of the ordinance, but then there's also some other considerations that we're kind of hoping for some guidance from you all in terms of how we evaluate some of these as they come in the future. The other piece of the special permit for this particular property is the access road standard. As the ordinance states, the access road shall be built to a Category 3 road, which of course is a 16-foot wide paved road. Alder Lane is not 16 feet wide in terms of paving. There is that much room in the I guess private right-of-way. But it does require a special permit based on the language of the ordinance as it stands right now. A couple of notes about the access road. You can see that it is fairly wide, actually. We have measurements to it. It's 10.5 feet wide. It is a private road. There is no road maintenance association, but one of the parcel owners up there has been the one essentially paving and taking care of the road for its lifespan, and they do a pretty good job taking care of it. There's certainly adequate space for emergency vehicles. There's large, wide driveways for all 4 of the properties, and they can serve as additional turnout areas should that be needed if there's oncoming traffic. The north side of the road, pretty much the whole stretch has at least 6 feet of shoulder that could also operate as a turnout. So, functionally there is at least 16 feet of road, even though it's not all paved. As I said, there's only 4 residences, so there's very low traffic volume. There's great visibility, all in all. Vegetation and debris is cleared regularly, and that's actually part of the condition that we've included with the approval. All in all, this road is a functional equivalent to Category 3 road, and as you will be taking up later on this evening, I think there is the recommendation from staff to change the ordinance language a little bit to reflect the functional equivalency of a Category 3 road as opposed to requiring an actual Category 3 road in terms of pavement. So, in summary, we do find that the proposed project meets all the general plan and zoning regulations with the special permit. The access road and neighborhood concentrations pose little risk to public health or safety, nor to the properties or anything else in the vicinity. So we do recommend that we make all the required findings and approval of the special permit and adopt the resolution approving the Mazzanti special permit for the short-term rental subject to those recommended conditions of approval. Thank you. That's my presentation.
Thank you. Any questions for staff?
I don't have questions, I have comments, but I'll wait till the public comment.
All right, thank you. And I'll open public comment then. And I see, looks like Mr. Mazzanti is on the phone. If you'd like to address the commission. Oh, you're here.
I'm here.
Okay. Here.
So,
okay.
I don't.
Please, you have 10 minutes if you want.
Okay, awesome. I'm Ashley Mazzanti. I'm the co-owner with my husband, Tim Mazzanti, so he's on. So I was going to speak first and then give him an opportunity to share a little bit as well. So thank you, commissioners and chair and staff, for hearing this. I know this is a newer process here for y'all, so I appreciate you taking the time to consider the special permit. I just would like to reiterate that this is a short-term rental for us, that we do have hopes and dreams to be here full-time. It's just not able to happen right now, but in the near future, that is our main goal, that we want to be here full-time. We absolutely love and adore Humboldt County. Trinidad is a very special place for us. Going down to the beach, being able to go for hikes, it's beautiful and magical and amazing. So we are so thankful to have that spot for us, and we would like to share that with others until we can be here, and then hope that by having the house available for a short-term rental, that can not only help meet our goals to be here full-time sooner and quicker, but then also help and give back to the local community versus just an empty house sitting there. But yeah, that's all that I had. I just wanted to say thank you for your time, and then I'll hand it over to you, Tim, if you'd like to share anything.
So, Mr. Mazzanti, if you're available, you have the floor.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Well, I'm coming to you from San Antonio, Texas. I'm pretty far away, but you know, the fact that my wife's there tells you that we're pretty serious about, you know, the community, the Humboldt County community that is, and it's kind of interesting. So we went there in June to celebrate our 15-year anniversary, and then we walked away buying a house. We didn't have a plan to do that. Matter of fact, my wife wanted to go to Hawaii, and I was like, well, I'm trying to find a cheaper way to, you know, do this 15-year anniversary. So I was like, yeah, Redwoods, let's do the Redwoods. But then I bought a house, so that's definitely more expensive. So really, I think she nailed it on the head. I mean, I always had an affinity for the Pacific Northwest. I've been living in San Antonio for about 30 years. And the first time I go to the Pacific Northwest, now I bought a house. So we're not trying to go ahead and turn this into like a business or anything like that. You know, just really to subsidize a little bit of the cost while we figure out our next move. You know, we want to go ahead and keep the area super nice. We don't want to go ahead and have hyper traffic of people renting the house or anything like that. We love the neighbors that we live by, and we want to respect them too. And you know, it's a really great place. So that's the comment that I want to leave there.
Good. All right. Thank you. And I don't know if there's anybody else here that wants to address the commission on this topic. I don't see anybody in the room or online, so I'll bring it back. Oh, excuse me. I do have somebody.
Welcome. Hi there. My name is Mike Reinman, and I would possibly help them manage the property up here, myself and the folks that we work together. And we've had the pleasure of talking to them through this process and stuff for a little while now, and they're great folks with their kids and stuff, and I think they would be real good folks for the community. And we've done this before, where we've had people come, rent it as a short-term mix for a few years and then move to the property. And it seems like it's a it's good for the community, and it's good for those folks as they kind of get their feet wet a little bit and find out what it's like, literally get their feet wet. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, bring it back to staff or the commission for any additional discussion.
I have a, we just approved
Excuse me, Commissioner, I was going this way first, so Commissioner Muldar.
I just wanted to comment, when we were developing the ordinance, we were precluded that this may happen, especially in the northern area along the coast. So I kind of foresaw this coming because of knowing, you know, there's multiple small roads with, you know, 2 to 10 houses. And sometimes, you know, we may have challenges, and I feel that there's been enough evidence submitted by staff. I didn't read any, unless I missed it. Was there a bunch of negative public comments that were hidden somewhere? Okay. So I'm in support of it, and I kind of felt that I appreciate the special permit process to protect people in the community, so that way it's not just, you know, over the counter, but also I did realize this was going to happen.
Thank you. Commissioner O'Neill?
So we just approved this, and so we're already stepping into waiving some of the rules that we came up with. That area was, you know, from what I remember looking, was one of the higher revenue generating areas for short-term rentals. So I can understand why someone would want to have a short-term rental in that area. But we also talked a long time about the need to have monthly rentals available and to not take units out of circulation, basically, for long-term residents. And so I would have a tendency to not want to approve this unless there was a time limit put on it, because I think anyone could come in here and say, oh yeah, I want to live here. But in the meantime, I think some of the numbers were in the high $60,000 to $70,000 in revenue in the Trinidad, Oric area for short-term rentals. I'm just not going to take the face value of, oh yeah, in 6 months I might want to live there. I think there should be a limit placed on it for short-term rental, because one of the main goals was to keep long-term rentals available. And I just think we're already making exceptions, and we're setting a precedent so that when other people come in, I feel like we should approve those also. We shouldn't just say, okay, this one, but the next one, no. That's just my own opinion. I might be in the minority, and it doesn't really matter, but that's how I feel.
So I have a little bit different recollection. I thought we set the cap to try to control the number of short-term rentals, and that we set these limits in the neighborhood were set, in my view, more on the basis to manage noise and parking complaints and neighborhood complaints that might come from a high-density grouping of short-term rentals in a neighborhood. And when I was thinking of that, I was tending to think more of a typical residential neighborhood with higher density. I understood staff to say these lots are 2.5 to 5 acres in size, so these are larger parcels in this particular neighborhood. So in my view, that's why we created the special permit option, so that it's difficult to create a one-size-fits-all ordinance, so there are going to be special circumstances that come up. This is a good example of that. And when an applicant is committed and wants to go through and willing to go through the special permit process, we get to hear these individual cases and make decisions on the individual cases like we're doing here tonight. So to me, the process is working. This is a good example of why we would have somebody come forward with a special permit, because it doesn't quite fit into the ordinance as we drafted it, but in my view, it seems to fit into the neighborhood okay. So, any other discussion? Commissioner? Yes.
Yeah, thank you for that background. That was going to be one of my first questions, was diving into the intent. I didn't really get into any reviewing any of the past hearings on the STR, so I appreciate that background. I think I'm personally leaning towards being totally fine with this project, and I think I'm leaning a bit more towards where Commissioner Skavdal was discussing or feeling like the process is working. I do feel like the sort of justification of consistent with the neighborhood can start to change as we allow more and more of these special permits. The neighborhood starts to change into an STR neighborhood. And so, but with that, I'm assuming we have a sufficient process in place for every time a special permit is brought, that this gives opportunity for neighbors to voice any concerns, and if there are no voiced concerns, then we should take that as being consistent with what the owners of the properties in that neighborhood see that neighborhood or envision that neighborhood.
Good point.
I did also want to bring up, is it, I guess through the chair to staff, is it correct that the second STR on Alder Lane did not come for a special permit that was approved?
That is correct, yes.
So I think maybe my suggestion would be, even in this case where you immediately jump in these, you have 4 or 3 houses, probably still bringing a special permit request to the commission.
I suspect those STRs existed before this ordinance was adopted, so they were kind of grandfathered in, if you will.
Yes, well, I think it's great to have this discussion. I want to acknowledge Commissioner O'Neill's point that, yeah, I generally agree with the way Chair Skavdal remembers it, but I think both can be true. You know, there is always a little bit of a trade-off in losing potential housing stock, even if they've already bought it, they're not going to rent it out for, you know, for other purposes, and that's their right as the owners. I guess I just wanted to sort of underscore that I do think it's good that you brought this one to the Planning Commission. Maybe when we get a little further down the road, there wouldn't be as much to discuss, but I think at this point, it is good to see how we're working this process of waiving or whatever it is, the limitations on neighborhood concentration. But in this case, I feel that I'm not concerned with those impacts, and I think the project is fine.
Commissioner Wildar.
So I want to be careful with our terminology. Waiving. I'm a little uncomfortable with that term because we built an ordinance, and we specifically said in these instances you can come forward for a special permit. Just as like the cannabis projects, you know, you meet these certain requirements, but then you have to come forward with a special permit or a conditional use permit. So I feel that we're still within the confines of the ordinance. Yes. So I want to be careful with our terminology because we start here and then all of a sudden it's a trickle down that, oh, they're bending over backwards. Like, no, these people bought a house, they followed the ordinance that's in place, and we have a decision. It would be different if we had a room full of, 5 people sitting here, saying, no, they're doing all these horrible things. They've already devalued the neighborhood. They burned holes in the asphalt, whatever it was. So I want to be careful with our terminology because I don't want to discourage anyone from coming to Humboldt County and spending money in Humboldt County and promoting commerce, because I don't know if you've paid attention, it's a little scary in Humboldt County. So I'll leave it there.
No, may I respond? Thank you, Commissioner Mulder. You're right on. Actually, we didn't waive anything. It's just different pathways that were set up, and if they were below 20% or 25%, they wouldn't even need any kind of permit. But over that limit, it means we need to take a look at it. Staff at least needs to take a look at it. That's what a special permit is. So we're not waiving it, you're right, and thank you for pointing that out.
Good discussion. Yes, Commissioner Curriasi.
I just had one other just side comment with respect to the staff report. I noticed in the staff report in justifying the project, they also noted the uniqueness of the Trinidad area. And I felt like that was in the context of we were making this decision of removing longer-term rentals off the market, and that was there was a lot of consideration around STR for that. And so I guess I didn't feel like the uniqueness of an area necessarily should come into play regarding addressing the housing stock and sort of that sort of bigger challenge. It doesn't impact the resolution or anything like that, but I did want to voice that.
Good point.
Ready to make a motion? I'd like to adopt the resolution 25- which does the following: finds that the Planning Commission has determined that the project is exempt from further environmental review pursuant to Section 15301 of State CEQA guidelines, and as a responsible agency agrees with the lead agency's findings and makes all the required findings for approval of the Mazzanti special permit for short-term rental, and approves the Mazzanti special permit for short-term rental as recommended by staff and subject to the conditions of approval.
I have a motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Muldaur and second by Commissioner Levy. Could we have any discussion on the motion? Good. Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner O'Neill?
No.
Commissioner Mulder?
Yes.
Commissioner Levy?
Yes.
Commissioner Curriasi?
Yes.
Commissioner Scavdall?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-1.
Thank you. Okay, if everybody's okay, we'll move on to item 4. We'll open the public hearing for the amendment to the short-term rental ordinance. And I'll turn that over to you, Director Ford.
Thank you, Chair Scavdall. So we have been in the process of implementing the short-term rental ordinance, obviously, and we've come across a few things that we would like to address. Thanks. And so what we really want to do tonight is talk about some of the unexpected consequences that we have encountered as we've implemented the ordinance, and then propose really what staff believes to be 3 very simple changes. One relates to how we refer to Category 3 roads. One is whether or not we should allow short-term rentals on smaller lots within AG zones. And the other relates to the separation of units as part of the neighborhood concentration. So the first thing is, and you just saw this referenced, is that the technical requirement of the ordinance for both home shares and for short-term rentals is that they need to be on a road that is built to a Category 3 standard. There's a fundamental problem with that. Not many roads in Humboldt County are actually built to a Category 3 standard. So our traditional focus of the county in evaluating roads has been on functional capacity, and you just heard that referenced. And so what we'd really like to do and propose to you is to change that section to simply say that the access road shall operate at a functional equivalent of a Category 3 road. And we believe that was the intent of the ordinance when it was written. I apologize that I did not catch the specificity with which we identified built to a Category 3 standard, because that really brings in all kinds of engineering dynamics. And quite frankly, we've had one particular home share that has raised a lot of consternation about the fact that a road is not built to a Category 3 standard. And so whether it's a special permit being heard by the Planning Commission or an administrative permit that staff's approving, it just removes that point of disagreement about whether it technically meets all the engineering standards of a Category 3 road.
Can I say something?
Absolutely.
And it probably didn't come out in my comments earlier, but that was the point I was trying to make. If we did something in our ordinance that doesn't make sense, then we need to change that, you know, even on the density. If it's under a certain number on the road, then we can, you know, I would rather us change the ordinance and make changes like this on the road so that we're being consistent and not just having to waive and waive it, because that's so subjective as to who's sitting up here, whether or not, or how nice the story is, or where they live, or gee, it's a nice couple. I mean, I don't want to turn down something, you know, that makes sense. But I think that the ordinance needs to make sense. And if you find errors, then we should change those errors so that we're not picking and choosing. Because I would like to have a short-term rental, but my house was built after a certain date, so I can't do that. So do I come in, you know, so that's what I'm getting at. It's really easy to just one at a time pick them off and change the whole thing, and then what's the point in having an ordinance in the first place? So I'm all for making changes that make sense. And then I get that too, that until you're actually in the trenches, you don't know if it's going to work or not. So, you know, maybe we should make these, and maybe there's others that we need to make, but I'd rather do that.
Appreciate that.
Well, can I just ask, I know you've only gotten through point 1 of the 3, just for my own understanding, what is the difference between a road being built to Category 3 standard versus operate at the functional equivalent of?
I think that's a great question. I should have gone into that detail. So basically, a Category 3 road would be a pavement section that's 16 feet wide, and it's intended to carry a certain volume of traffic. And so, as we've seen, and I'm hesitant to bring this up, but we've seen it the most, is with cannabis projects where you've got a road that may not meet the Category 4 standard in that case, but it has maybe some narrow spots where there's turnouts on each side, and so you can see cars coming. The volume of the traffic isn't so great that the road will fail because of the amount of traffic on the road. It's perfectly capable of handling the amount of traffic without creating a safety hazard. So it has less to do with the pavement section and more to do with the capacity, if that makes sense.
It does. Thanks.
If I could move into the neest one. Ooh, sorry, that was an attempt at having something soothing, but so we, as the commission will recall, we really made an effort to identify that in resource protection zones, the AG, AE, TPZ, that short-term rentals could be allowed as a farm stay. And farm stay had to include some kind of activity that related to the resource that was going on the property. One of the things that we have discovered and didn't really anticipate is that the Agriculture General, or AG zone in Humboldt County, while it's a resource zone, is also used as a transitional zone. So in many cases, there are smaller lots that are approved in the AG that really function more as neighborhoods. And we have discovered that there have been many short-term rentals in those areas. And really the smaller lots don't function as ag land. I mean, a 3-acre parcel, it's a nice piece of property for sure, but it's not ag land. And so we don't really want to do away with the protection that we put on the resource lands in terms of, and also the requirement that if it is resource lands, allowing it with the experiential component of being able to experience the agricultural use or the timber use or whatever it is. So we're proposing that an exemption be created within the ordinance, and that would basically keep the same language that's there in 60.05.10.2.4, but then add except as follows. And then basically allow short-term rentals in the AG zones on parcels that are less than 5 acres. They would go through the same administrative process, be subject to all this other requirements that are components of the short-term rental ordinance. On parcels that are slightly larger, that could have some ag usage on them, and obviously we propose between 5 and 10 acres. I question that. That could be far different, but that would then be a special permit. And so that would allow some carve out for the AG parcels that are smaller to be permitted as short-term rentals. And then on the transitional parcels that may be or may not be associated with ag land, to give the commission or the zoning administrator, depending on the case, discretion whether or not that should be approved. And then the next one is neighborhood concentration. And the big one here is the ordinance says as the crow flies, the nearest 10 houses. So the big purple or big orange line there, I can't see colors, identifies 10 houses as the crow flies. So you can see that the main street there is School Road. So for sure, the area north of School Road is a different neighborhood than the area south of School Road. But the way the ordinance is currently written, if that blue lot, the lot colored in blue up there, were a short-term rental, all of those lots south of school could not have a short-term rental without a special permit. I don't think that's what we were anticipating when we wrote that. We considered at one point maybe doing the 10 nearest houses just crossing out as the crow flies. In this particular case, that would be just the houses immediately adjacent to the lot colored in blue. So the proposal is to say within 300 feet of the center of the house. So basically the center of the lot, draw a circle 300 feet. And so there couldn't be another short-term rental within that. And that begins to really address the neighborhood issue. This is really not about the number of short-term rentals. It's really about neighborhood compatibility. And so we're just trying to really focus down on the neighborhood.
On the one previous, does it matter how big or how many square feet it is? Like what if I want to build a 5,000 square foot, short-term rental? Does it matter on 3 acres or less than 3 acres?
Well, if it's a large lot, the 300 feet probably won't go outside.
I'm talking about the one we were talking about before. You said less than 3 acres ag land. Does it matter how big the unit that they build on it
No.
is? No. They could build as big as they wanted.
Yes.
Could it have multiple rentals on it?
No.
Just one.
Nothing else is changing. So it's just, rather than saying you can't have it without a farm stay, and the problem with that is that on small lots in the AG, they have no agricultural use. They have no use that really relates to farming or ranching or timberland.
But they lend to the overall scenic kind of ag area, right? If they're under.
Well, it is a more rural setting. But, and I think what we're saying is that, do you want to treat it as a farm stay, or do you want to treat it as something that's just more of a large lot neighborhood? And it's really doesn't have the same resource concerns as like land in AE or large lots in AG or TPZ for sure. So we're presenting that some of these neighborhoods that have lots between 3 and 5 acres, or 2.5 to 5 acres, which is similar to what was approved earlier today. It just had different zoning. I mean, it really becomes the same kind of context. And so we're just trying to create some allowance there for those smaller lots because they don't have the same agricultural concerns. So this one would simply say that there shall not be another short-term rental within 300 feet of the proposed short-term rental, measured as a 300-foot radius from the center of the dwelling used for the short-term rental.
So, to be clear.
Yeah.
So back to your picture that had the purple-orange line.
Yeah.
That's a relatively dense neighborhood.
Yep.
Small lots.
Yep.
A lot of residential lots are 60 by 100. So if we said 300 feet from the center of the house, that means if your neighbor had a short-term rental, you wouldn't be able to have a short-term rental.
You need to get a special permit.
To be able to get a special permit.
Right.
Okay.
The way it is right now, in fact, I didn't want to use the actual houses, but the thing that really raised this is this very neighborhood where there is currently a short-term rental on the south side of School Road.
Yeah.
And then somebody's coming in somewhere over on like Marty.
Yep.
And they have to get a special permit. And those are so unrelated.
Right. No, I'm just trying to think ahead. It's like, yeah, how many people are we forcing into the special permit? How often does it come up that two short-term rentals are right next door to one another? I don't know. I'm just.
As soon as I find out my neighbor's making $70,000 a year, I'm moving out and moving out.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. You answered my question. I just want to make sure I understood the 300 foot. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, well, thank you. I get why the wording as the crow flies could cause some ambiguity about how we're measuring. Does it have to be a straight line? So granted, that is problematic language, but I just want to go back to the question of the 10 nearest dwellings shall not be short-term rentals. In another context of slightly less dense neighborhoods, 300 feet radius from a house wouldn't probably capture any neighbors. And so I guess I'm questioning whether this change is consistent with the intention to try to, and again, it's not a prohibition, it's just saying it's not, you have to get a special permit or some sort of permit if this applies to you. I'm wondering if by changing it to simply 300-foot radius is perhaps not tight enough for assessing or capturing the sort of impacts that this provision was intended to capture in a less dense neighborhood,
So, I mean, I hear what you're saying, and we could have something to the effect that there should not be another short-term rental within 300 feet of the proposed short-term rental, or within the nearest 10
I mean,
residences.
you could have it basically, and again, I'm not wedded to this, but you could sort of set it up that it's one or the other depending on which applies.
Right. And so part of the thinking with this is that when you get into the larger lots, because the concentration becomes, or the density of the development becomes far less, you have greater separation between units, you don't have the same impact. I'm not discounting what you're saying, but I think that is a factor to be considered. And if you've got 10 5-acre lots, I mean, that's huge.
Yeah, that's a big area.
Yep.
Right. Sure.
Commissioner Muldaur.
So for me, I'm looking at this. I remember when we were making this language, I think we were leaning more towards big partials, like, you know, old roads, you know, that go far out there, and trying to capture, like, neighbors are probably like mile away from each other, quarter mile away from each other. But seeing, we made an ordinance, and then seeing that we're having some hiccups, and then the demonstration there showing like, hey, whoa, we didn't realize the impacts of our ordinance would be pitting neighborhoods against each other that are not really affecting each other as far as impact. I'm okay with this language change. The only thing, if we were trying to also capture those larger partials, maybe just put an asterisk that this language applies only to partial sizes less than 1 acre or something like that, if we really wanted to try to split hairs. But personally, I think seeing that we put in language and that language kind of doesn't work, I'm good with the change, just because, thank you for the picture. That really, really helped. It was like, whoa, I did not realize our ordinance would be that impactful to neighborhoods that probably don't even know each other unless they walk around the curbs. So that's where I'm at on that.
Yeah, I agree. Again, I think this neighborhood concentration issue was largely related to noise and parking type issues that we were trying to address here. 300-foot radius, I'm trying, you know, that means they're at the other end of the football field. That does seem to be a reasonable distance to say if somebody's going to be closer than a football field away, they have to come get a special permit. And I'm just trying to, you know, again, assess. These permits were intended initially to, most of them, go across the counter, to be a simple process. Somebody comes in and applies, they go across the counter. I really don't want to create a situation where every other permit is a special permit. It doesn't seem like we're getting there because this is the first one, and I assume you've processed a lot of permits across the counter. And that's another, I would like to see, not tonight, but at some point in the future, that perhaps you come back to the commission with a report on how it's going, how many permits we've issued, how we're doing with respect to the cap in these different neighborhoods, you know, what challenges, if any, you're having. But it would be interesting to just see how the process is going and actually how the numbers are playing out in these neighborhood concentrations versus what we actually thought they might do.
Yeah. If someone, like the last couple, if they move into their house, now it's their permanent residence, does that permit become available, open again in an area where it's impacted by the number? Or do they get to keep it?
No. No, in fact, one of the things that, you know, permits expire after 2 years unless it's renewed. So if they came in and, or if they moved into the house, say, in 20 months and decided not to extend the short-term rental administrative permit, or now it's a special permit, then that would open up that
But
rental.
if they, how much does it cost for them to renew it?
I think it's, right now, I think it's like $160.
So it would be in your best interest to just keep renewing it, even if you were living in the house, just to keep that option available.
Well, but one of the questions we asked them is, are you continuing to rent it?
Oh, and if they aren't, then they lose it?
Right.
Yeah, they have to demonstrate use.
Yeah, they have to use it, rent it a certain number.
Because you're collecting revenue as a county off of the short-term rental over and above the permit?
Well, there's a TOT tax.
Right.
And frankly, I don't like to issue land use permits based upon revenue, but we can't be entirely blind to that. It's really about, in this particular case, protecting housing stock, protecting neighborhood character.
Well, and I'm thinking about the number of permits, because there were some areas that were more desirable than others, and if, you know, someone did move into the house, that permit could be available to someone else.
I don't know if you heard Mr. Lohnhofer say, though, that there's only 9 that we've issued in the Trinidad area plan.
And they had, yeah, but they already had a lot of grandfathered in already, right?
Well, they still had to get permits.
Oh, I see. But the city issues their own permits.
City issues their own permits. This is just the Trinidad area plan,
They're outside the city.
right.
Yeah, that was surprising, actually.
Because they had a lottery in the city.
One of the things that has been a huge disappointment, frankly, is as simple as we tried to make this process, it's still too complicated for some.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of what I was thinking, is that if this, there could be more than just this that needs to be changed, and how many times do you want to go back changing it? Do you want it to go for a little while and, you know, capture more issues before you make a change, or do you want to just change them as we go?
Well, I didn't just, these have been building for a while. I didn't just bring this back because somebody complained yesterday. We've got a number of people in the AG zone. We just had somebody just get so frustrated with us that they withdrew their permit and, you know, demanded a refund. I mean, some of these are based upon real struggles that are tripping people, and that's.
I was just thinking maybe there could be more that we need to really.
If there were, I'd be bringing them back.
Okay.
I mean, I don't like to struggle with things. If there's an incongruity within the ordinance, we'll definitely bring it back to you. But these are the ones that are creating constraints right now, or unintended consequences. I think the separation one is just clearly an unintended consequence.
Well, I support all of these. I mean, I'd rather see these changes than us picking and choosing based on how nice somebody looks.
I mean, one of the other ones that I don't think there's a way to resolve this is that, you know, what's 10% or 20% of the units on a street when there's 3 units?
Yeah.
I mean, the first one already exceeds it. Does that mean you can't have it? Sorry, we do have these discussions.
Yeah. I think we're giving you some flexibility on that.
Yeah.
Well, that's when you say when they're less than so many units.
Well, the first one gets to go, no matter what.
Okay. Okay, so I assume that concludes your staff report.
Yes.
And so we have some other questions. Commissioner Kirazzi.
Yeah, I think I have a couple of comments. I'm assuming we're in a comment period rather than
discussion.
discussion.
We have to take public comment before we get comments, correct?
We are taking public comment on this. That's
already
right.
kind of gone into discussion.
Yeah.
So should we wait and go through that process?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to take too long.
Okay.
So why don't we open this for public comment? So we've concluded the staff report. We'll open for public comment. Thank you. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, thank you again. I just want to say I think that the planning team has done a great job on this. I've been in this zone for 20 years in terms of short-term rentals, and I've worked with hundreds of people that have them, and worked with a lot of different, really all the different cities in some way and stuff, and I think this was done really well. You know, I think and these changes that are being discussed today are great. I wonder, the AOB thing, I wonder how that, I know, I've actually had a couple owners go through that, converting an AOB to a traditional permit as well. I know that's can be a painful process, but in general, I feel like it's really going well, and I really appreciate it, and appreciate the healthy discussions you're all having. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And we have somebody still following us online. Do we have anybody want to address the commission from Zoom? I'll give that a second. And seeing none, I'll close public comment and come back to you, Commissioner Kirazzi, if you had a discussion item or comment.
Yeah. I appreciate the discussion around the intent as well, that the background's really helpful, and I'm curious what the intent was around the crow flies clause, or was it entertained of just keeping the access road constraints and leaving it at that? Why was the additional as the crow flies added? And it feels like going from the crow flies approach to the 300 feet approach swings the other direction. Now we're protecting, or I'll for lack of a better word, use the word protecting, the higher density areas, and now we have a situation where the larger lots can then sort of more easily convert to these STR approaches. So I'm curious, what if we just removed 10.6.2.1.2?
Removed all. If we just removed that whole provision and left it to the other provision, which speaks to the density within a given access road.
That's right.
I don't remember even the term crow flies, so it was probably just something staff put in there, but I don't remember having a discussion about crow flies. It really was surprising that you brought it up.
That did not come out at a public hearing, and, you know, the best way I could explain it is sometimes staff loves to be creative and colorful without recognizing that you can't really do that in ordinance language.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we've debated, how does a crow fly?
I have a lot of them in my yard, I could probably tell you.
I don't know. As the raven flies, if you'd said raven, that would be different. But I want to just, I see your hand, but if I may just quickly, yeah, I mean, leaving the crow flies language out of it, though, I think, you know, Commissioner Curriasi, that is a valid point. I do remember having a discussion about not crows, but about the idea that a provision like this should, because you could have situations where people are not on the same access road, but they're abutting parcels, or there's a cluster of parcels that are all still forming a neighborhood, and so this would be another, you know, we were trying to have belts and suspenders. You know, if it's like this, it applies that way. If it's the other way, you know, you would apply that term. So I'm kind of like what I said before, I do think 300 might be a little less protective than what was intended by that, but on the other hand, a football field is a pretty good distance between houses, so I'm not overly concerned about it.
Commissioner Muldaur, waiting patiently. Thank you.
So for me, I'm a little, like, if we go back to intent and purposes, completely removing 10.6.2.1.2, I think would be a little bit against what all the public comment as far as protect housing stock and all that kind of stuff. So I think it would go against our very beginning intent. So I'd have to really, like, if we we're going to course correct that way, I'd really have to sit on that one for a while. Question for staff. I mean, I'm supportive of all these changes, but on the smaller partials of AG, a workaround, and I know you hate that term, a 120 square feet or less chicken coop or greenhouse could justify a farm stay. If I was an applicant, I would try to argue that.
I could understand that, but that's where I think that what we're trying to do is just get the clarity so that people don't have to go to illogical things to try to justify something. I've seen people try to argue that they have a farm because they grow chickens in the forest. And
so making these changes would make
Chickens in the forest.
Staff time more value, or better used, because they wouldn't have to be trying to figure out if this is really a farm stay or not.
Right.
It'd be simple, check the boxes, no reading a plan of how you incorporate the farm stay.
Trying to interpret, is this really a farm stay or not? I mean, so in your situation, I don't want to be too facetious here, but, you know, it's like, okay, what's the agricultural activity going on? They're going to go out and look at the chicken coop. Is that kind of really an agricultural use, or is that a backyard project? I mean, I could have a farm stay, and my neighbor's got a steer in the yard.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. So this would prevent that workaround and better utilize staff time. Right. So I'm in support of all the language before us. I guess the other question I had for staff was the intention for us to approve tonight, or make corrections and come back for a second reading, or I'm just clarity on that. I feel that we didn't get a bunch of, you know, usually when we get new language and if there's like, oh, you have to change this word, I haven't heard that, I didn't read it. So I personally feel through the public process, I'm comfortable to move forward on this tonight.
It's entirely commission discretion. I came prepared to go either way. If you'd like to go forward tonight, I would love that. If you have things that you would like to see addressed differently that we can't address tonight, we can bring it back.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner?
Maybe just to that, maybe clarifying, it sounds like I haven't heard any discussions around the Category 3 change in language. I'm fine with that. And then, basically changing the units from, acres per unit to units per acre. I think that makes a lot of sense. That brings clarity. And so those were like the three elements before us. So it feels like the change to the crow flies to 300 feet, that makes sense to me. I appreciate that additional background and context. I also feel like the 300 feet is about consistent with the less than 1 unit per acre constraint. You're about in the same ballpark there. So I think staff came up with a good number there. And I guess lastly on 10.6, correcting the 1.000 to 1,000 feet.
Staff, I'm sure, have noted that. Mm-hmm. Commissioner Muldaur?
Just to clarify, what I meant, I'm supportive of all the proposed language, so everything that's been striked out, and then all the new language that's underlined, I'm supportive of everything that's been presented tonight. So I apologize, I wasn't clear about that. Yes, it was a motion.
So we have a motion from Commissioner Muldaur.
I'll second.
Second from Commissioner O'Neill. And to Director Ford, appreciate that, again, these one-size-fits-all ordinances do need a little adjusting, so I appreciate that you're working through the process and bringing back some practical changes that will help streamline the process, make it easier for applicants and easier for staff, and more clear for us. And we still have the special permit process for exceptions when they come up. So can we, I'll call for a roll call vote, please.
Commissioner O'Neill?
Yes.
Commissioner Mulder?
Yes.
Commissioner Curriasi?
Yes.
Commissioner Levy?
Yes.
Commissioner Scavdall?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. We had no items pulled from consent. Report from planner. Anything to report?
Yeah, the main things I just wanted to make you aware of is that there are, well, in a bigger picture, the Board of Supervisors gave cannabis permit holders an opportunity to pay off their Measure S tax and to pay any money that they owed the department for processing their permit. And that period is coming up pretty soon here at the end of March. And there are quite a number of permit holders that potentially fall in that category. Beyond that, there are currently about 130 permit holders that never entered into an agreement with the treasurer tax collector and also owe the planning department for processing their permit. We're going to start taking those forward for revocation. They're already suspended. We're going to start taking those forward for revocation to the board in early March.
To Do they come here first, or they go direct to board?
Directly to the board.
Okay.
Do you know if those are active users, or they just never got started, or?
A lot of the initial ones probably are folks that are not active anymore. So it's a difficult time, and I just want the commission to be aware that we are struggling with that right now.
You might want to, if they are active, come up with some sort of plan, because there's a lot of other economic issues going on the federal level that are going to seriously impact this county financially, and we don't need to drive anybody away, but, you know, maybe they just need a payment plan, I don't know. But if they're not using the farm, then that's a different matter, but.
That request has been made, but if you'll recall back to, I think it was last September, the board offered the payment plan to permit holders.
So maybe they'll come in if they see that it's getting revoked. I don't know, what do you think?
I'm having a hard time not sharing personal experience. I will say that I do have 2 farms that, you know, owe the county tens of thousands of dollars and is on a payment plan, but, you know, if someone doesn't pay you, you can't really pay your bill. We got a beautiful ADA compliant break room and parking spot that I paid to finish, so but I know other farms that don't have that done and are compliant on their Measure S tax, so it's like, do you do all your conditions of approval, or do you pay your taxes?
Right.
So, I mean, there's all those stories out there, and there's some people that have, no, I'm not going to say that word. There's a lot of reasons why, but I mean, I could share personally that I have a piece of paper that someone owes me $327,000 signed by a judge. I don't think I'll ever see a penny. So it is what it is.
I appreciate that context. If I may just, under report for planner, also just echo what Chair Skavdal already said about the short-term rental ordinance. And yeah, as you get to a point where you have enough data that it makes sense to report back to us, I think we would all be curious to hear how many permits have been sought, in which neighborhoods, where are we with the cap, all that kind of stuff.
Okay. We can bring that back. Yeah,
anything else?
Nothing else that's really pressing is striking. Yes, we're about to release 2 EIRs. We'll get to make those available to you. One is for the Regional Climate Action Plan.
Oh, that's right.
The other is for the McKinleyville Town Center. So boom and bust. We're going to boom here for a little bit.
Yeah, okay. Any planning commission discussion items?
I'll just note that I'll be missing the March 6th commission meeting.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for notice. Hopefully we have our other chair filled by then. Okay. All right, meeting adjourned. Next meeting, February 20th.